person, that entity I was in my dream. Where is it now? Don't tell me it just ceased. It had to go somewhere. Something had to continue. Where is it now? It isn't. It ceased. Likewise, our consciousness now, our identity, our sense of self, historically, my self-image from my childhood and who I am, that sense of identity in realization ceases. And that's what the Buddha was talking about. Cessation of the whirlpool. It ceases. So people would ask him, where do I go then? Do I go to nirvana? It's a meaningless question. Do I go to nirvana? There is no I. There's just nirvana, because the individual localization dissolved. There's no continuation of something. So, when we are asleep at night having a dream and we are this personality, this identity in the dream, when we wake up, it's gone. But we don't notice, when we wake up in the morning, the subconscious isn't done making its entity identities. It starts projecting the identity that you're experiencing right now of who you think and feel you are. That's a subconscious projection. It is no more real than the projection that you had when you were dreaming of being this entity in the dream. It's a projection of the subconscious. The subconscious is creating this entity from thought. And that's the person you are in your dream. When you wake up in the morning, you think you're no longer that dream entity. You're not. But it's not being noticed that the subconscious is creating a new identity based on history and conditioning. And that's what you inhabit, not noticing that it's a subconscious projection. So when we do certain practices, looking into the emptiness of self, looking into the nature of the whirlpool, and seeing where is there a self, an actual substantive self in this whirlpool that gives the feeling of self, the subconscious projection of this whirlpool, where in that is the actual self. And when the whirlpool slows down more and more and ceases, we see clearly there never was a self in there. The feeling of self is the whirlpooling. When the whirlpooling ceases, the sensation of self is no longer. What there is Rigpa, which is a sense of beingness that can't be defined in terms of self or identity. It's something that's non-conceptual. So, what can happen and what needs to happen for all of us is just like when your mind sees a piece of rope on the floor thinking it's a snake, and we turn the lights up, and all of a sudden the idea of snake is seen to be ridiculous. The mind was superimposing upon this form of the rope and labeling it snake with all of the representations and meaning of what snake means, what we've learned about a snake, is now projected on that rope. When we turn the lights on, the mind no longer sees snake at all, and all of the associations with snake and the adrenaline we feel, all of that immediately ceases. Likewise in our mind, when our subconscious mind that's projecting this sense of self, it's seeing, experiencing the body and the mind, the secondary consciousness, and it's labeling that, not snake, but me. So instead of saying the mind-body, which is like a piece of rope, instead of labeling and saying, oh, that's a snake, the subconscious mind saying, oh, that's a me, that's a self. I am that. That's what I am, that's my identity. So the subconscious now has this identity that's associated with the physical form and the mind, self-image. From conditioning from childhood, this self-image I have is myself. That's what the subconscious is projecting. If we can turn up the lights enough, The subconscious sees that the body and the mind is a body of mind, a whirlpool swirling with no self in there anywhere other than a bunch of thoughts, empty thoughts about a self, and the subconscious will see that and stop projecting me. Stop projecting the identity of a me. Just like when you wake up in the morning, the dream identity, the subconscious ceases projecting it. Or even when you're in a dream at night and you start saying, wait a second, this is too strange. I must be dreaming this. And you wake up. You realize you're in a projection. You realize you're in a dream projection. And the subconscious at that moment ceases the projection and you wake up in your bed. And you go, oh, that was cool. I recognized in my dream that I was dreaming. So likewise, our consciousness now, the mind, certain things can take place in the mind, in the subconscious as well, to where the subconscious goes, oh, and it ceases projecting this feeling of self, this feeling of me, which is identical to your condition before you were 2 years old. The subconscious was not projecting a me thought yet. So to a person that's less than 18 months to 2 years old, the subconscious is not projecting a me identity. That organism, that mind-body, doesn't have a thing called a me. It's not being created yet. If we could somehow talk to that child intelligently with concepts and say, could you describe to me your sense of self, your me, what that is? It would be like, there isn't one. I have no, that's not in here, that doesn't compute. Because it's not part of consciousness yet. It's not there. So likewise, in Rigpa, the subconscious mind has ceased projecting the me, the self-identity, and there's just an absence of self.